really want to thank Jerry for having me out for this great workshop, and especially for letting me come a day early to observe the training. I really enjoyed and learned a lot yesterday about mapping and geocoding, and I'm going to certainly at least at the minimum geocode my next vacation, but I'm hoping we can do better and put some of it to use in the newsroom. Also, thanks to Alicia for all the help and the arrangements you gave, and to the Knight Foundation for this really great program. I think I heard from all of y'all that it's really been a great week. I want to give you a little bit of perspective on change. They asked me to talk a little bit. Normally when I talk about our changes in Atlanta, I'm talking to editors who are trying to figure out sort of how to change their newsroom, because in Atlanta we have undergone a fairly radical transformational change in a fairly quick time. So I'm usually asked to talk about how to change a culture, how to, as an editor, shape your newsroom. I want to sort of walk y'all through some of those lessons because I think they can be sort of incorporated to you personally as you go back and be change evangelists and change ninjas. I've changed my own title, change ninjas in your own newsroom. I will also talk about some of the personal perspective about change, and then we'll have lots of time for questions, I hope, and we can talk about whatever y'all want. I want to share today a little bit of perspective on why I think changing newspapers is so difficult. Sometimes I think that historic context helps us. Some insight into our Atlanta reorg, and then some personal lessons that I've learned along the way over the years as a change ninja and change agent, and that hopefully can be helpful for y'all. First of all, I like to talk to communities about why is change in a newspaper so hard. A newspaper is fundamentally, if you think about it, a manufacturing environment. In Atlanta, we produce 320,000 products a day. We have this amazing sort of assembly line of production, from assigning the reporter to, vetting the quality of the headline, to getting it on the presses, to getting it off the presses. We deliver more packages in Atlanta, apparently, than UPS, with those daily papers falling on the driveway. So newspapers are essentially, they grew really out of a historic sort of manufacturing environment with what the Readership Institute identifies as sort of a perfectionist culture that can be really slow to change. We have all that quality assurance, from reviewing the headline to checking the dot gain on the photo as it prints. And our cultures in newsrooms historically have been most like a hospital or military organization. They're very error avoidant. We can't possibly let an error get in the paper. And we can't possibly, attack the wrong army or do the surgery on the wrong patient. So the culture that we have is an error-avoidant conflict of perfectionism, typically command and control driven, much like the military. Newspapers the past few years have really had to change that to become a much more constructive culture and to really begin to compete with a very different kind of culture, a technology culture. We're competing with technologists who, they have some really quirky things about them. They play ping pong in their offices. They don't like meetings. I've heard a lot of these technology companies have these stand-up meetings, and I'm like, what? No meeting where the big boss comes in and decides every single thing that's going on the front page tomorrow? How can we compete with that when we have these technology organizations that are so fast-moving? In a traditional newspaper culture, risk-taking is low. The risks are high. What if you made a mistake? What if you got it wrong? What if you had your credibility at risk and moved too fast and maybe lost readers because you moved too fast? In a technology culture, the risk-taking is high and the risks are low because you can put it up and change it. You can put it on the web and change it. If you get it wrong, you can fix it in a few minutes. So this is the collision of cultures that we're really navigating today in all of our newsrooms, and that y'all are really on the front lines of navigating. I like to give an example from Atlanta that I think really brings it home. In our newspaper in Atlanta, we have a traditional cafeteria. It's called the Deadline Diner. It's right beside the press room. Well, you know about the press room, right? The pressmen operate the press. They've operated the press forever. There are no press women. There's not even a women's bathroom on the press floor in Atlanta. The pressmen are the old culture of the newspaper. They come into the Deadline Diner. And because we're Southern, you know, they want their meat in threes. And in a Southern culture, meat in three means, you know, some meatloaf. Okay, we're Southern, so potatoes and gravy, maybe rice and gravy, maybe a side of biscuits with a little gravy, you know. And so they're in the deadline diner. And now in this new culture, we have search engine optimization experts, and we have interactivity managers, and we have quality assurance messaging managers, and we have, you know, some crazy titles like directors of culture and change, and some of these new sort of technology jobs that are so different. And they don't want the meat in three. They want the salads. They want the California cuisine. They want the arugula in their salads. They definitely don't want the gravy. So you've sort of got a little bit of a picture there of the cultural challenges that we have in moving newspapers ahead. It's quite a challenge for all of us. I know you've been through a lot of it the last few years, and we're sort of seeing that as we compete with new technology, how we have to make that change, become more innovative, become faster, become more nimble, become less hierarchical, less top-down, less driven by command and control. I want to show you a little video that we put together to explain our reorganization in Atlanta. That was designed to do exactly that. Now, let me give you a little bit of setup. This is a video that we did for the APME Innovation Contest, and it was designed just to sort of give a broad overview of what the reorg was all about and why we wanted to do it the way we did. We did the reorg because we think we have two really key jobs to do in the future. And one is really produce a printed product that continues to satisfy loyal print readers and keeps them engaged and, you know, makes them want to pay that hundreds of dollars a year to get the printed product on their driveway. And then we have to provide this digital product that is really quite a different experience. It's not a replication of the printed product at all. It's an entirely different experience. It's in many ways an entirely different audience, and in every way an entirely different audience expectation. So even if it's the same audience, they're expecting entirely different things from the product. We felt like in Atlanta that to be able to do those two big jobs, we could not have a structure that was built around the traditional structure of a daily newspaper. Most daily newspaper structures, how many of y'all have a metro department, a sports department, a business department? Okay, built around what? The sections of the newspaper, right? So your entire structure is built around the sections of the printed newspaper. We didn't feel like we could do that. Let me see if I can cue up this video, and we'll go to that real quick. And I got to figure out how to get the player there. Oh, hold on just a minute. Let's go. Uh-oh, y'all didn't want that. Sorry. Where did it go? Do you have any idea? Sorry, you wouldn't think I was a technology person at all. Okay, there it is. Let's just back it up. That'll be great.
After Julia made the announcement.
We've gone through a lot of so-called reorg. What was your initial reaction when you heard about the reorg?
All right, that's right.
I think apprehension. I'm used to Julia bouncing ideas off of me, and so when she showed me the four circles, I knew it was a radical idea.
Very radical and very ambitious plan.
Well, this isn't going to be fun at all.
It's different. It's dramatic.
Glad to be here.
Fine, so I stand in front of the camera.
It's not hard now.
I actually left her around shortly after Julia made the announcement.
We've gone through a lot of so-called reorganization.
I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been in a reorg.
The unknown.
This was sort of off the chart.
Yeah, you might want to super glue your butt to the seat. Just hold on. This is different than a lot of other work that's been done. A lot of work, frankly, that we've done in the past. This was more than name changes. This was more than some new jobs. Half the jobs in the newsroom changed.
I was one of those whose jobs was eliminated or consolidated.
Every process changed.
There was no process that we left untouched.
It's taking a little bit used to. The ways we were organized. I think at the the end of the day, only 3 people kept their same seat. In the old world, we had 12, 13, 14 departments.
And then they each had sub-departments and sub-departments and sub-departments, you know. We now have 4.
News and information,
Enterprise,
Digital department.
print.
I need people over here who are thinking about the print audience, focusing on that audience, living that research, understanding those readers, and really working for them.
It's my job to make sure that we produce a newspaper that people actually want to read.
Print and digital audiences are definitely 2 different audiences.
I think it's really powerful in the way that we reorganize the newsroom is that the print department cares only about the newspaper.
And take on a little bit more of the perspective of the reader.
One of the great things about the Bureau now is they're really able to focus on just presenting the stories to readers.
We had lived in online for a long time. We knew what it was to get breaking news online. We needed to go to the next step.
But what was going to take us to the next level was the training and the planning.
I'm the digital planning editor.
I'm the senior editor for training.
I had to make sure everybody was trained at the same level all the time, and that wasn't happening in the old world.
Robin actually counted the number of tasks we had to do.
We had 1 producer, they had about 70 jobs.
She built stories, she built photo galleries, she did the metro page, the business page.
Starting from scratch, what would we do? We'd need producers, you'd need people channel managing channels, you'd need a multimedia team, you'd need an interactivity team.
Blogs, here a blog, there a blog, every reporter wants a blog.
You take care of the digital side first because people are viewing our website throughout the day.
Digital is right now.
But we've hit record numbers.
Traffic this past month was record-breaking in every aspect. Michael Vick, what the reorg has helped do is get that news online very quickly.
And then we go to content. One of the toughest things was sort of how do you divide that in a way that makes sense? Because on the one hand, we're saying urgency, more, get online, fast. And on the other hand, we're saying, you know, for print, we need to explain why. We need to step back a little and give people something unique they can't get elsewhere.
My department is about 180 reporters, editors, photographers, information specialists, and we basically are the sort of the backbone of producing both the daily news and the daily online site.
I like to believe that as the NNI reporter, that I'm largely driving the coverage.
Filing early, filing often for online.
Now you write a story, it's online immediately.
And the print product has become newspaper now.
You have to figure out how to finesse a story or advance it so that it doesn't seem a day old the next day.
Enterprises as a department is a team of 50 people.
And that is our first priority, the print product.
In enterprise, that's fundamentally all we do is enterprise stories. They're unique stories. They're distinctive stories no one else is doing.
I think in the old world, there were a lot more edits, a lot more layers of editing, but there was also a problem with those being done in a timely fashion.
In this new world, I and anybody else in my department can come in with a great idea and get it done.
It's not a laid-back department by any means.
And I think one of our goals now is to prove that a narrative or a profile doesn't necessarily have to take that long, and it doesn't always have to be a huge thesis.
2 departments that pitch content and 2 departments that catch content.
Yeah, pitching and catching, it's an interesting concept. I had never thought of it. I don't even know who came up with that term.
Churning out copy, posting it online.
We knew that in print we just couldn't squat behind home plate and take what's ever thrown to us. But like catchers, we had to, help call some of the pitches.
It also does a better job of us identifying what we're going to give to our online audience, what we can do special, unique for our print audience.
We are reinventing the business model. We are going from a place where we have very little competition to competing in a digital world in which there is lots of competition.
I think it's really good now because the competitiveness across the board is really shot through the roof.
For so often we've been a one newspaper town, and suddenly now we're competing not just with television but also radio, which we have never done before.
But the basics, the fundamentals of going to get the story and getting it first, all of that stuff's not new at all. It's still just journalism.
We are exploring a new frontier, a new way of doing things, and that kind of has people a little bit jazzed up.
It's going to require a lot of work by all of us because what we do has so much value and is so important to so many folks in this world that we need to make this work.
No, it wasn't painless.
That video was done by Ryan Horn, one of our multimedia producers. There was a little segment in it that's a little bit dated, but within a month after the reorg, our traffic doubled. And some of y'all may have caught that there. When they asked how did it manage to double, did anybody hear how we managed to double? Michael Vick, yes. Michael Vick was arrested for dogfighting, and that clearly was a big deal for our local audience. Let me talk just a little bit about what we accomplished with this, and then I'll give you some personal lessons from it, and we'll go to questions. We did, as we said in the video, collapse more than a dozen desks and departments into 4. We did have a voluntary buyout at the same time that we did this, so we reduced the newsroom staff by about 15%. We're very lucky in Atlanta because we have private family ownership, and we're not a newspaper company. We're a big multinational company full of all kinds of businesses like Dent Wizard, which suctions the dents out of your car, and Auto Trader, and my favorite business, Mannheim Auto Auction, the world's largest auto auction. So they give us a little bit of time and patience to figure out sort of the changes we're going to make, and also treat our employees very well. So our buyout, we were very lucky. Basically, it was employees who were eligible for retirement, 55 and older, and they were able to keep their medical benefits for life as they left the company. So a lot of folks found that an attractive offer. We reorganized by separating content and presentation. You heard that there are the 2 content departments, enterprise and news and information, and then the 2 presentation departments. That was unique in the structure. We went from 7 layers to 4. The 3 that we eliminated were all management layers. So we essentially have now staffers, line editors, senior editors who are the equivalent of department heads, and then the leadership team, and that's the layers. So some of that talk about layers of editing and layers of decision making we eliminated. We established 9 new operating principles that are sort of posted around the building and on the internet, and we talk about to help people understand decision making in the new world and how you make competitive decisions about what to do on print, what to do in line. One of them, I'll give you an example, was our local principle, where we talk about how we're going to be a local newspaper in terms of meeting the needs of our local audience. We're going to give them national and international news and the context they need, but we are not going to go out and produce that anymore if it is available from another service in an adequate form. So as a big regional paper, we always went to the presidential campaign, the Olympics, the hurricanes in Louisiana, those kind of things. Now we're only going to do if there are unique local angles that we need to tell, and we are doing a lot of that. I mean, we had a reporter in Iraq last week on a local story. It's not that we won't travel for a story, but it is stories that we'll travel for that we can't duplicate, with the wire. We're not going to try and replicate what the wire is doing. As the editor, Julia Wallace, mentioned in the video, we changed half the jobs in the newsroom. That was probably the most painful part of the reorg. You got a little notice essentially that said either your job was staying fairly similar and you could keep it if you wanted, or you could apply for a new job, or your job was changing fairly radically enough that it wouldn't really be fair for us to just say, okay, you got the job and you didn't, because it was maybe a consolidation of 2 jobs. And so we had to have competitive interviews for those. We did 268 interviews in 3 weeks, which was 3 weeks I have to never go through again. Dramatically increased the resources for the web. We have a 60-person web production department, but also 170 people in news and information who are geared toward the web first. Positioned ourselves for an upcoming print reinvention. We do have a redesign and new presses coming in this year, $30 million in new press towers to help us be able to do a better printed edition and more efficiently. And so the print department that you heard about will be doing more with that. These are just a couple of structural issues that we had to deal with along the way. Want to reduce layers, right? What's one way to do that? Well, The leadership team, the top leadership team, the managing editor level in the newsroom is no longer allowed to attend news meetings. We felt like if they were spending all their time, as many newspapers are, where you have 2 or 3 page one meetings a day, and if your managing editors are sitting in a meeting worrying about page one tomorrow, then they're not worrying very much about the future beyond tomorrow. They're spending all their time focused on what's the front page for tomorrow. That is not a winning game. We have plenty of good people who can make incredibly smart page one decisions at a level that doesn't require the entire leadership team of the newspaper sitting in a news meeting every day. So we have news meetings, but they're smaller. They tend to be stand-up. They tend to be senior editors and below, and they tend to be fairly fast decision-making meetings. We survey every few months and find out, is this a meeting you feel like you need to be in? If you don't, how can we revise it and get rid of time in a meeting so that people are doing their jobs? We do, because of the nature of the structure, have a planner in each department. The planning team coordinates with one sort of what we call the omnibus planner, and they help make sure we know what's coming across the departments. We mentioned in the video we mapped every single process. Y'all saw in the last slide of the last presentation a fairly comprehensive process map. I'm sorry to report that we have books and books of process maps in our newsroom now that explain every workflow. We had to do it. When you change every workflow in the newsroom, then to be efficient, you have to retrain everybody and help them understand the workflow. But it's not something that any of us got into journalism to do. And especially my director of newsroom development, who's in charge of all process mapping, and every month or so she's like, when can we stop process mapping, please? One of the concepts that is really important to us is the concept of specialization. A lot of newsrooms are going toward generalization. Everybody does everything. Every reporter shoots video, shoots, tapes audio, does everything. Our reorg is really built around specialization. Print understands the print audience. Digital understands the digital audience. There are specialists in the news and information department who collect information for the calendars every day. It's not a matter of asking every reporter to go out and do data input and fill in the calendars. We have calendar specialists. We are asking our reporters to shoot more photos so that our photographers can shoot more video, but we haven't outfitted every reporter with a camera and a ready-to-go Mojo kit. We do have some Mojo journalists, but they're specialists. The other things we have, we call it the big-ass breaking news desk, which is when you have a really big story, which Atlanta's a really big news town. We have usually 3 or 4 stories a year that will just make our traffic exponentially go up, and then it never really comes back down again. And so these are our opportunities to catch new audience on the web. It's like really every time there's a big story, like you've heard of over the years, the runaway bride, the courthouse shooting, the downtown tornadoes, the Michael Vick story. We just have these big stories. People tell me that, you seem to always be on the national, cable channels with big news in Atlanta. And we do, and every time we do, it's an opportunity to grow our web traffic because people in Atlanta who haven't visited us before come and do that. So we feel like we've got to get that absolutely perfect. So we have a really elaborate, ornate process for big breaking news to make sure we can keep up when something big happens. We have an integrated customer care desk. What does that mean? It means we have someone who answers the phones and takes news tips and gets them to people. If you eliminate every department, then no one knows who to call. You think about our structure. You've got a sports editor in digital and a sports editor in print and sports editors who run reporters in Enterprise and N&I, but you don't have a sports editor. So if someone wants to talk to the sports editor, who do they talk to? Well, it depends whether they're offering something that we would do with freelance, in which case print might take it, or whether we do it with staff, in which case one of the content departments might take it. If it's a press release, and both content departments need to sort it out. So we have a 10-person team that takes every phone call. They deal with all the web tips. They also help people with their, if you have a glitch on your AJC.com, account, or you can't get something to work, or the video won't play, they do all that. So they deal with all of the customer traffic. Every single phone number and email address in our paper goes to that one desk. We split off our digital business side operation from the newsroom operation, so we have two departments. One's called digital and one's called the internet department, and the internet department does the business side stuff. This is probably the way a lot of y'all's newsrooms work. Ours have gotten muddy over the years, so we just clean that up. I mentioned the management layers. I'm going to skip that slide because I'm going to come to some of that in another way. I want to just give you a couple of lessons I've learned along the way, and then I really want to open it up for questions because I want this to be a conversation as much as anything else. First of all, I want to take just a second to say, who am I to tell y'all how to deal with change? And, you know, I do have a fancy title. It's not, I'm sure, the best title, but it is a title about change. But who am I to tell other people about change? We have done radical change in the newsroom, and I did help lead that, so I've got some credit on that. But more than that, I really have a career sort of record as a change leader. I was one of the first computer-assisted journalists in the country. I learned how to drive a mainframe back at USA Today when all of the computer-assisted reporting had to be done on a mainframe. I've sort of reinvented myself every 4 years. I'm not sure this is really something that I should tell y'all as a complimentary thing, or maybe it's a kind of a questionable thing, but I've never stayed in one job more than 4 years my whole career. So I've been a car specialist, an investigative reporter, an investigations editor, a top editor, a change director of culture and change that I'm going to change the title to Change Ninja tomorrow because Buttrey said that was a better title. And so I do know, sort of what it's like to go through having to learn and having to be new at something and having to be, as Jill Geisler from Poynter says, temporarily incompetent. Jill says whenever you're new at something, you are temporarily incompetent. And I have been temporarily incompetent for 1 out of 4 years of my entire life. So I'm always learning new skills and new competencies and trying to get comfortable with something new and different. And it seems like just when I do, it's time to change jobs again. Luckily, at my age, that doesn't make the next few years of the newspaper sound quite as daunting as it does to some of those people who have been in the same job for 20 years. But so if you'll indulge me on some lessons I've learned along the way, and I want to give you some just for sort of you to think about as you go into your newsrooms and evangelize change for your institution, and then I want to just give you some personal insights, and then we can talk more about how my newsroom went through change and adapted to fairly radical change. First of all, I think change requires rigor. We recognized that in Atlanta when we named me Director of Culture and Change. We felt like you couldn't possibly do the amount of change we had to do without having some jobs that are dedicated to that. It's a process that you have to go through, and it has steps, and it's not something you can do on the fly. And some newsrooms do it just fine without a Director of Culture and Change. I'm not saying that's what you need, but you do need some rigor. People say, oh, change is a journey, not a destination. Well, I agree with that, but if change is a journey where we just wander around sort of lost for the next 6 months, we're going to lose a lot of ground. So I think change is a series of concrete steps of, first having the leadership and the vision of where you want to go, then putting in place the organizational structure and the processes that will get you there, communicating to everyone what it is that the new roles are, the new jobs are, the new functions are, training them around how to do those, and then finally accountability. And I have to tell you, that's one of the hardest parts is, if you say, okay, we're going to ask you to blog for us, and we're going to get you really, really excited about blogging, and then, 3 months later, we're going to come back and say, you know what? Your blog's not doing so well. We're going to let someone else do the blog for a while, and you're going to do something else. And people are like, but I took this big chance, and you took a chance on me. And so there's got to be some accountability. That's not to say don't take risks, take challenges, but it is to say have some accountability around it. The second thing I think is really important for institutions is to be really relentlessly audience-focused. This is something we have not done well as a newspaper industry over the years. I think you all know that, Steve talked a little bit and some of the other speakers talked a little bit about the arrogance that we've had about we'll just tell our readers what we think they ought to have. And at Bakersfield, they talked about turning the product over to the audience. That's what I'm talking about. Letting your audience tell you what they need and meeting their needs and making sure that we give them what they need and not what we think they need. And that requires not just, a focus, but some knowledge, some training of the newsroom on what is it the audience is looking for when they're on the web. How does that differ than what they're looking for from a print story? A lot of newsrooms, I think, have made a big mistake of assuming that what people wanted on the web was the news story. And so, I can't post it because I don't have this fact and this fact and this fact confirmed. And so, hold off, get it finished, work it, and then put it up, and by then the news is old. Think about what the audiences need and be really relentlessly audience focused. The third one is very difficult for us right now because I don't think we all know exactly where we're going. And I always say you have to have really, really clear picture of what success looks like to do effective change. And if I told you I know exactly what success looks like for the newspaper industry, I'd be lying. I really don't. But I think you can set short-term goals. I know that in our newsroom in Atlanta, success looks like learning to change. Success looks like learning to understand our audiences. Success looks like building our capacity to shift our resources to online and to get more efficient at print and to not have the entire newsroom focused on tomorrow's front page all the time. So those are short-term goals, not necessarily where we'll be in 5 years, but they clearly give us some clear goals and vision right now for folks to know what they're aiming for. Training, huge. I hope y'all all have active training programs in your newsroom. We have a requirement that you have to have 40 hours a year of continuing education. We call it Cox Academy credit if you're a supervisor and 35 if you're a staffer. And those are in-house classes. You don't get credit for coming to this. We figure if you get to go to this, this is a luxury, and not everybody gets to do it. So you have to have your base training in addition to any sort of fantastic, exceptional outside training that you get picked for. That's a week a year. That's not a lot when you hear about other industries like lawyers and teachers and accountants. Some of them have 2 weeks a year requirements or more. I don't see how we can get where we're going and get better every year as a product if we don't get our skills better every year. And I just don't believe that people can do that while they're doing their daily jobs all the time, go, learn on the job. I think people have to have time for training. So I think you saw we have 2 senior editors and a third editor on our newsroom who do full-time training and who have a full-time training program. And it's all about giving our employees the skills they need to get ahead and to keep ahead. And finally, the last thing for a newsroom sort of cultural change that I think is important that's often overlooked is that you have to teach the newsroom that you reward new things. I think you talked about rewarding failures and quitting and moving on to the next thing and saying we're going to stop doing something. That's very unusual. In our newsroom, we had a very big challenge when we did this split of news and information and enterprise because guess what we've rewarded very heavily the last 4 years? Great enterprise. Get your story on the front page. Kick some politician in the butt and put them in jail. Investigations, enterprise, long, depth stories. And so when we ask everyone what department would you like to work in, it won't surprise you that the newsroom tipped on its axis as everyone ran over to the enterprise department to apply for jobs. We had some jobs in enterprise that had 10 applicants for every job. We should have expected that and predicted that because we trained the newsroom that, page one, that's it. And you have to make sure in this new world that the person who inputs, y'all have seen this week, I think, some of these amazing voter guides. Voter guide is a public service journalism thing. It's every bit as much a public service as the story that puts the politician behind bars. If you can figure out if your politician is lying, if you can figure out how to vote for them, that's public service with a little p, little s instead of a capital P, capital S. But the person who designs the voter's guide on the web, the person who calls up the politician and, takes the survey or figures out how to send out the form, the person who inputs it, those people have to be valued as public service journalists just as much as, the big P, big S. In particular, I think one of the hugest things we're going to have to change our rewards for is pacing and length, big depth. I want to be the depth reporter, and one day I want to write the long project that I spend months on and spend hundreds of inches on, and that doesn't translate so well to the web. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. We absolutely should do it. But as we get more and more focused on the web, we've got to find new ways to meet our public service mission. And people who are sort of stuck in I've aspired my entire career to be able to spend months writing a project and researching a project and then have 3 open pages to tell it, or 3 parts over 3 days. We've got to change those rewards. We've got to make them understand that other work is just as valued. Let me give you a few individual perspectives on change leadership for yourself and how to think about change yourself, and then we'll go to questions. You're all innovators. That's why you're here, and I think that's really great. I couldn't be more excited about meeting all of y'all, because I really get excited about meeting people who are willing to take risks and do new things and come learn new stuff. I would say it's really, really important to be a strategic innovator. And I add that word because I think it's so important at a time when, the industry is in trouble and we've got to change fast. And what I mean about that, I think Steve talked about just good enough technology. I guess I would say in many ways be just a good enough innovator. Don't become so expert on Google mapping and the stuff you learned yesterday that it's going to take you 6 months to learn it. Because if you do, it will have changed by the time you learned it. Learn enough, as Jerry said yesterday, to get it out there and then tweak it when it doesn't work. And, try new things all the time. But don't think about, I'm going to become so specialized and so deep in this one area that I'm going to be so perfect at it. We had an employee at our paper for a while who did some archiving, and they put stuff into the archive in a way that it would come out in an order that was, I can't remember if it was chronological or it was, organized by A1 first and then, B1 and then C1. But they had a clear order in their mind of, the hierarchy that people would expect in the archive. And it was something that they had a lot of pride in and spent a lot of time getting it in the archive in that certain way. Well, it's a search engine. You can search for what you want. And so people are not using the archive in a way that says, let me call it up at the top and scan from the top to the bottom in the hierarchy I need. So that's just a way of thinking about, using your skills in a way that is efficient and is really able to learn and grow and learn new things, but really be efficient about it. Another thing I'd say is as a strategic innovator, don't get hung up on things that don't matter. I was talking to somebody yesterday about one of our databases that has done almost 1 million hits in traffic, and it's the baby names database. And it's the most popular baby names in Georgia over a certain period of time. And there was some rumbling in our newsroom about, first of all, that's not real journalism. And, it may not be journalism with a capital J, but clearly the readers liked it on the web because 800,000 to 1 million of them spend a lot of time looking up their baby's name and where it ranks and is it in the top 10 and all that. But the other thing that was a certain buzz was that the database was not 100% complete. It wasn't everything in Georgia. And so, some folks would say, well, we have a value of accuracy, and because there are some counties that are not in this state database, it's not accurate, and we can't possibly put it on the web, and we have to think about our value of accuracy and uphold our journalistic responsibilities to truth in baby naming conventions. And of course, the people who worked on it said, oh, we'll put an asterisk on it and tell the readers that some of them are missing. We don't have any reason to think that the ones that are left out are, a trend in baby names. That, South Georgia has different baby names than North Georgia or whatever. There's just too much, honestly, sort of swirl around, oh, can we do that? Oh, can we put up baby names? It has value. It may not be the thing you want to spend your career on, and I can understand if you make that choice, but don't denigrate it. It's paying your bacon, okay? Don't sit around and find fault with everything that the new media people are doing that conflicts with your sort of old media way of thinking. I know none of y'all would do that because you're all here, and so you're all fabulous figures. But I just want to say, really, don't get hung up on things that don't matter. There's just not a lot of time to spin out on big debates about baby name accuracy. Use replicatable stuff. That's sort of a big word for me to say, but if you're going to map your vacation with your geocoded thing that you're going to truck along, then make sure you make enough notes as you learn to do it, that when you come back and a tornado hits your community, you can use it again for that. Learn the technology in a way that lets you be more efficient the next time you do it. Don't do what I have done many times in my career, which is struggle to learn and then not really sit down and think about what are the lessons I've learned from that and how can I do it differently next time. And then finally, and this is hard for me as a person with a career in no holds barred, no limits, investigative journalism. The story is worth anything, any amount of time, any amount of space. But think about what the story is worth, and think about that all along the way, because there are some times that we get all caught up in the story in a way that is way beyond the level of interest that our audience is ever going to have. I have an investigations editor I work with really closely for years, and he's fantastic. He's just fantastic, and we were doing a death penalty database to accompany a story that we did on inequities in the death penalty in Georgia. And he came up with this incredibly elaborate way to go down to, the nth detail of every single case and the prosecution of the cases and how they got handled. And I asked him, I said, Jim, this is great, but this will take a ton of web resources to do, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get our web producer guys into it. And, how many people do you think would look at that? And he thought about it, and he said, well, I feel like it would be really, really of high interest to me and the DAs. And I'm like, okay, then maybe we'll just post the database and let you and the DAs have at it instead of making this elaborate search engine for the, how many ever are 104 DAs plus Jim there are in the state. So really think about how much time it takes. Be a teacher. And I know y'all all are because you're here. But adopt that as really something that's really important to you. I know a lot of people who have come up through the technology side with me who I'm very blessed to have a lengthy background in investigative reporters and editors, which is a teaching and sharing organization. And so they kind of raised me that way, to share my stuff and to be an open source person from the beginning. But I know a lot of people who don't work that way and who sort of hoard their stuff and who won't talk about how they got the story or what they did. And I will just tell you, just flat out, I'm as certain as I can be that the people I know who are sort of the open source share your knowledge, share your skills people, have far more successful and richer careers than the ones who are competitive and secretive and private and want to keep it to themselves. So I know that none of y'all are that way, but every now and then you might feel like, I don't have time to explain to this person again how I did my geocoding for this fantastic map. Be a sharer, be a teacher. It will enrich your life, it will enrich your newsroom, and it will enrich your career. Let me go back. I don't know if I know how to go back. I'll just talk. Be a lifelong learner. Learn everything you can. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I have to do this in my life because I can't do it in my job all the time. So I have to learn about Second Life. Y'all know what Second Life is? My name is Jenna Georgia online in Second Life, and I've got my, what do you call my avatar? And she's really cute. I mean, she's about 15 years younger than me, really hot. But, that's Second Life. It's okay. So, but I spend about a month getting up on Second Life and learning what it is, and then I feel like, okay, I understand that, and I'm going. I haven't been back to Second Life for months. I mean, it wasn't that anything bothered me. It wasn't that I didn't like it. It was fun. Maybe I'll go back at some point and see what the latest updates are, but I get it now. And so now I'm Twittering my friends, and I'm blogging my grandmom, and, you need to find the jobs that need to be done in your life, whether it's keeping in touch with loved ones or whatever it is, and incorporating the new technology into your life so that you can be a lifelong learner. I decided yesterday that I'm going to go back and start a little innovations mapping group in our newsroom to do some of this Google mapping, because I think just even if they don't use it immediately in their job, just the idea of thinking about it and knowing what it is going to really help folks be able to adapt their skills when they need them. And so that's why I, much as my daddy warned me about using credit cards on that big, bad internet and all that, I've always been an early adopter, and I've always tried to embrace into my life whatever kind of technology comes along, because I feel like in some ways I don't have time to learn it all at work, and if I'm going to stay ahead, then I have to do a little bit of it in my life. Plus, it's really fun, It's really kind of fun to learn all that. Learn about your audiences, and notice I say audiences, and I think that's really important. Do not confuse the print audience with the web audience. They may overlap more at your paper than they do at mine. Mine don't have a lot of overlap. We have a lot of people who read the paper on the web all week and then read it on Sunday at home. And they say, oh, Sunday paper, I want a very, very different experience than a Monday paper or a Tuesday paper. Do not do what the industry did for so long and think that the web is about putting the paper online. It's not. And if you live your life online, you'll know that. You'll know that there is nothing at all about the web experience that's like the print experience. The best example I can give is travel coverage. A travel section in print is very, very clearly designed for aspirational thinking and dreaming. Let me see these places that I might visit. Let me see the beautiful pictures. I'm not going to get the full range of prices and the flights but I'm going to get some idea of what it would cost if I visited Ireland this year. And I'm going to get some idea of what it looks like to be in Nassau, Grand Bahama. And I'm going to read from someone who traveled there about the experience. Online travel, book the flight, compare the price, look for the hotel. It's all about utility. I would never scan for a destination in a travel site online and read about the travel experience from a great writer. They're just very different experiences. So if you don't take away anything from your learning here but that, I think as you experience your life online, you start to think about what does that experience mean for your readers, and what does it mean for your work? What is the thing that you do in print, and what's the thing you do online, and how do they differ? Last thing on learning is don't be afraid to admit mistakes, and I know y'all all know how to do that. So we've all made them all our lives. We're getting good at admitting it. So the last thing I would say is, as hard as it is, and it really is, but as a change agent, a change leader, as your own change ninja in your own life, be relentlessly optimistic. And I know that's hard some days. The world is changing all around you. And it feels like, oh my God, my paper's for sale. My friends who've worked here forever are taking buyouts or being laid off. Oh my God, this is the scariest thing. And I completely understand that. But I think in the face of that, all you can do is focus on this is the most magnificent opportunity to change our industry in a way that can reach people in just unthinkable ways. I mean, I think about my own history, and when I was at USA Today doing computer-assisted reporting, I bought the first 286 computer. It was a compact 286. I hope I get the facts right. If compact checks up on me, I'm going to say I'm doing this from memory, so I might not have it exactly right. But it was a 286 that we got to process our census stuff. And if I remember right, we went out and really priced the best, most wonderful thing we could get, and it was $43,000. And it didn't hold that much. I have a little thumb drive right here that holds more than that $43,000 computer and cost me $18. So the amount of opportunity for change for technology in our lifetimes and in our business is just something you got to get excited about. That guy yesterday, what a crazy dream. Give everybody all the knowledge in the world. I wanted to ask him, anybody who can think that big, can you tell us how to fix newspapers? I mean, he's a big thinker. But when have we ever had the ability to think that big? I'm just certain that what we do has value. What we do is really, really important. And so we will figure out a way that people will pay for it again, and we'll make money off of it. And, I don't know exactly what the business model will be, but I don't have any doubt at all that what y'all do, the work you do, is so important to society and your communities that we'll work through it. The last thing I want to give you is a poster child for what you do has value. This is Katie Hamilton. Katie Hamilton is an intern at the Chicago Tribune, and proves that journalists can do it better than anyone. The Sun-Times had this contest about renaming the stadium. It was a joke about were they going to rename it after Sam Zell, and it was called the Zell No contest. And folks, audience, readers, were supposed to send in some kind of presentation about why the stadium should not be renamed. And what's the name of it? Tribune, what's it called? Wrigley Field. Okay, so he was going to rename it as a joke at Sam Zell Stadium or something. And so they had a reader promotion where everybody entered, and thousands of people sent in their presentations. And this just proves that journalists can always do the best storytelling. Katie Hamilton, who is an intern for the Chicago Tribune, won the contest over thousands and thousands of non-journalists by doing a storytelling music video that you can find online. But it just, again, goes to show, in the end, journalists are going to do storytelling. And what we do has value, and folks are going to continue to value it. So that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer all the questions you have. Thank you very much.
It's about the reorg that you guys did. There's certain types of jobs out there that I guess bigger papers always kind of thought that if they're playing in the big leagues, that they should have, decent sized Washington bureau, foreign bureaus, stuff like that. Was there anything that you guys got rid of that was maybe kind of like shocking at first, but now you think not that big of a deal?
Yeah, the question is, were there jobs that we got rid of that are sort of the big boy jobs that regional papers have always had? Yeah, they were, and there were, some controversial stuff. We eliminated our national movie critic. We have a local movie critic that writes about the local movie scene, but we eliminated it. I shouldn't say our national movie critic. We eliminated the job. The woman who had that job took the buyout, and we eliminated national TV writing. We eliminated a fair bit of sports stuff that was conference-based rather than locally based. We're in the SEC, and we still do some SEC conference stuff, but not nearly as much. We had Southern regional correspondent who traveled all over the South and wrote those quirky, great Southern stories about race and catfish and biscuits and who knew what else, and we eliminated that job. It's not something anyone would want to do. It's not something we would choose to do. And it's not something that I would say was done without a great deal of heartache. Our national movie critic, Eleanor Ringel Gillespie, is quite good and really beloved by a number of readers and had been with us for since I was a kid. I read her when I was a kid. And so it was a very difficult choice. I wouldn't say now we look back and say, oh, that was easy, because it wasn't. But it was the right thing to do. We have to be able to provide our readers with the exclusive local stuff. Our philosophy on travel is that every time we're outside of our market doing a story that we could get from the wire, there's a story in our market we could be doing that's not getting done. And so there's a story we could be bringing our readers, we're not, because we're duplicating the wire.
Shawn, yesterday when we were talking, you were saying like you have some numerical goals that you apply to things. We were talking about blogs and what was, how much time was it worth it based on traffic to the blog. Can you talk about like what sort of performance metrics you have set up and like have you determined that they're too rigid or too light, and in what areas have you applied those?
That's one of our biggest cultural changes. I mentioned in cultural change that you need accountability, and I think that's something newspapers have quite honestly lacked. We do try to look at our blogs every quarter and see if they're performing well. This is not by any means a rule, and it wouldn't apply to every blog. Some blogs you just do because they're the right thing to do. Some beat blogs, no matter how much traffic they get you tips, they keep you connected to your beat, whatever that is, they make sense otherwise. But for the blogs that we clearly feel like ought to perform, we look at like 400,000 page views a year, and if they're not making that, then we assess whether they need changing, whether they need changing focus. I'd say more than that, the more difficult thing has just been individual goals for individual staffers. Our enterprise department, I think you heard them say, this is not a slow-moving, long, slow-moving department. It's not, because every single reporter has a numeric number of stories they're supposed to hit over the course of the year. And it's not if you hit, if your number is 60 and you hit 59, you're in trouble. But it is, here's a goal for you of the pace of, what we want you to produce. And so that's been a challenge for folks to get used to. In Ann and I, people, each individual has sort of a, here's how much of your time we roughly expect you to spend on print, and here's how much we expect you to spend on digital only, and sort of here's the mush in the middle that serves both. It's an attempt to help give clarity to people about what it is, what are the jobs we think need doing, and what is it that we want them to be spending their time on. If I said it was an easy sell with reporters, I would be lying. It is not. Metrics are not something people like in newsrooms, and I understand that. And we're trying very hard to, be realistic about what's an appropriate sort of amount of metrics and what's not. Our digital staffers have traffic goals for their channels. The reporters don't. The reporters instead have products and product goals. Products, it sounds like a manufacturing word, but content goals of things they're supposed to provide to help meet the goals. So digital might say, okay, I'm going to have a traffic goal for this channel. Some of what I need on that is I need some content like this and this and this, and then the content side gets the content goals for that. It's a fine balance. I would say certainly it's something in my job I have to watch and make sure we don't become, I don't want anyone to feel like it's a factory and we're making widgets. We know we're not. But at the same time, there does have to be some accountability and some measurement of what works and what doesn't. If you don't measure things, you don't know what works. Here.
My newspaper's in the process of getting rid of the old style desks, geographical, and changing them. And I'm not sure if this is what happened to your paper, but there's a lot of confusion about overlapping beats, that there may be some juggling, and also how we address local, the local beat, because it seems to cross over desks. Do you have to juggle beats? Do stories? Do you have to kind of trade off where a story's going to go?
We have, I mean, I'd say our particular version of that relates to what is enterprise versus what is news and information. And it's a constant communication and sort of a constant discussion of that. It's been particularly hard for enterprise to figure out how to get into a news story. So enterprise in our newsroom includes, narrative writing, profile writing, trends, explanatory, investigative, and watchdog. Those are the forms that are in there. So if we had a hiker who was abducted while she was hiking in the mountains and later found killed, and at what point does enterprise get involved in that? Do they, you'd like the narrative of the search, and at some point it developed that the alleged killer was a serial killer. Well, then you certainly want that, the enterprise story about how did they miss the sign so long, or whatever. I'm being hypothetical, but there's certainly enterprise around a big story like that. If enterprise is just sort of hanging out on the scene of the crime the first day, but not really doing anything, looking for the angle and trying to figure it out, then the in and out guy's like, well, what am I doing wasting my time here? If they're going to be here, they can do the daily. Well, if they're doing the daily, chances are they're not thinking of the enterprise angle. So there's some sorting out to do on that. It's not the cleanest division in the world. It's the thing that makes the difference is, and the reason we did it, is that enterprise's first client is print, and they're supposed to be thinking always about how can I provide a unique local cover story to the print edition. And Ann and I is there to feed the web as quick as they can. So they really are thinking about different products, thinking about different audiences. What else? Yes?
So are you saying that the enterprise stories don't really have a place on the web, or that the audience isn't there for those? Or I wouldn't think that to be the case.
The question is the audience not on the web for enterprise? The answer is it depends, but it's not automatic. There's certainly great enterprise to be done on the web. It's not typically in the form of long-form printed journalism. That doesn't translate that well to the web. I'm not going to say people don't read it, they do, but they don't read it as much as they read news. The thing that in our philosophy is that the printed edition has to offer something that is not part of the web experience. We do post our enterprise on the web, but it's not posted, immediately or early or with great fanfare. And if we think it might harm the print, then it's posted after. So if we work a long time on an investigative project that's going to break on a Sunday, and it has a compelling photo of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of one, a mother mourning her child, in a story about autism research or something like that, and it's a really compelling photo, then the last thing we want to do is have it be the lead web photo on Thursday, because by the time the audience gets into Walmart on Sunday, they feel like that's stale. So the enterprise department their first client is print, and N&I's first client is digital. That doesn't mean they don't, that the N&I doesn't provide for print and that the enterprise doesn't provide for digital. They do. But it's like who gets first dibs on this work and who gets to make the best use of it for their audience.
Just following up on that, do you do any promotion offers online then if you don't have it to offer, but everyone's like, where's the story, community talks?
Right. The question is, do we promote the enterprise in advance online before it runs to print? We're looking at that now. I've got a little task force learning about that. There are some places that have done that and found that it does incredibly well. I'm not sure exactly with our audience. We have a fairly solid core of people who read us during the week online and read us in print on Sunday. And they're a pretty important part of our future. We feel like we would like to keep them online during the week and in print on Sunday. So we're looking at how best do we promote from the web to print and from the print to the web. We really haven't sort of figured out our total philosophy yet.
I guess my question is
everything is online. It's just when it's online. For quite some time, we've posted everything online the minute it was ready, and we've been rethinking that. The community is not trained yet. That's what we're looking at with the task force now, is what do we need to do to have the community understand and to market and to promote back and forth. Here?
Two questions. First, can you talk a little bit about what the beats look like in news and information and enterprise? And second, how can you apply the same kind of thinking to really small papers that say maybe only have 10 or 15 people total and editorial?
The question is, what do the beats look like in Enterprise and NNI, and is there any sort of application of this to small newspapers? The beats are in NNI. The NNI has all the beat reporters. The Enterprise is really organized more around forms. So you have narrative and profile specialists. You have explanatory specialists. You have investigative specialists and watchdog specialists. They do all the topics. But they, if the beat reporter has got a big breaking story and the new, CEO of Delta is proposing a merger, and we think, oh, great, Enterprise for Sunday would be a profile, and the beat reporter's never going to get to that because they're so busy breaking the news, then the Enterprise person would come in and do the profile for them. As far as what might translate to a smaller market, the one thing I would say I'm certain translates is understanding that the audience experiences are different. And as much as that feels like it stretches a very small newsroom, you can't, I've actually heard some people say, we don't do anything unless it works for both. And I'm like, well, then you don't do much, do you? Because not much works for both. So you have to be selective about what are you going to do that really, really works for you online, and what are you going to do that really, really works for you in print. And, the way we've looked at that is our cover stories. We call it the Enterprise Department, but I joke it's the unfortunately named Enterprise Department because, of course, the beat reporters do Enterprise too. But our cover stories that come out of Enterprise are really special for print. Yes?
This week we heard a lot about wearing a lot of different hats, and a niece at our Daily News likens it to, we're all on the submarine, we all need to know everything about the submarine now. This incredible shrinking newsrooms. What's your philosophy? How do you feel about reporters who want to rotate around in your newsroom from being, taking some time to learn about, posting database or building and studying and analyzing, and then also writing some narrative, which in a lot of smaller newsrooms we have to kind of do it all.
Right. The question is about specialization and generalization, and does everybody have to do everything? And what if you don't? What if you want to not specialize and you want to learn a lot of different things? My answer on that is a little bit tough. It's a little bit hard to say to folks because I understand and respect people want to learn a lot of different things. A lot of this stuff is very difficult to learn. We had a graphics department that said they all wanted to learn Flash. Well, they all kept trying to learn Flash and producing dozens and dozens and dozens of print graphics a day, and guess what? Nobody was ever really great at Flash, and the print graphics weren't really, exactly what we wanted either. We split them up. We said some of you go to digital and learn Flash and get really good at it, and some of you do print graphics and be really good at that. I know that's not a luxury every newsroom has. We are lucky to have the resources we do have. I'd say to me the translation point has to be around whether we're doing things because they serve our readers efficiently or whether we're doing them because we want to. And if we're doing them because we want to, that's not necessarily going to serve the readers. And that's a tough thing to hear. We have an incredibly wonderful award-winning narrative editor in the newsroom, and everybody wants to work with her. And we're like, we're going to have some people who don't do a lot of narrative work with her now and then, but mostly she's going to work with really great narrative reporters Because what we're going to get out of that is, instead of a bunch of sort of learning experiments, we're going to get some really great narrative. And that's what our readers deserve, and that's what we're here to do, is serve our readers. So we're really trying to change the equation to be about what can you do that serves the audiences, and how can you take joy and job satisfaction from that. And certainly we do want to cross-train. We are going to look at that more as we get a little further into the reorg. But my thinking on cross-training is not to do each other's jobs, but to understand each other's jobs. If I have to train people in the 19 kinds of software they need to work in digital, then they're going to be there for 3 months learning that, and then they're going to go back to the print copy desk. That's just not smart. That just doesn't make sense to me. So, Ron?
Suppose a breaking news reporter on a big story comes across a character and thinks, what a compelling person. Is he or she required to hand that off to the enterprise desk, say, here's a profile, or can he or she take it?
The question is, does breaking news have to hand off their enterprise that they run across on the beat to enterprise reporters? The answer is no. They do not have to hand it off, but nor are they allowed to hoard it to the point where they never get it done. You've all experienced that, where the beat reporter said, oh, I'm going to do the big story and the profile and the enterprise, and there's an investigation on my beat and some minor term watchdog waiting, and by the way, I'm going to go learn to do multimedia stuff about my people too. So yeah, the answer is, if you can get to it, you can do it. If it's going to keep it from the readers in a timely manner, it's about the readers. It's not about what you'd like to do. It's not about what enterprise would like to do. It's about getting it to the readers in a timely, newsy manner. So we have tons of N&I people who do enterprise. As I joked, it is the unfortunately named department, because the idea that beat reporters wouldn't do enterprise off their beat would be very disappointing to any beat reporter. They do lots and lots of enterprise. But the rule is, enterprise can't do breaking news if it's going to stop them from getting to the enterprise, and news and information can't sort of stop and hold up on the big news on their beat so that they can say, oh, I'd like to write the leisurely profile. Doesn't mean we'll never trade them back and forth. We have loans across the departments and that kind of thing just to keep people fresh. But in general, the idea is get it to the reader in the appropriate time. And if that means handing it off, then hand it off. Sure.
Shawn, once we're at the reporter's level, I wanted to ask you how much of the change that you've gone through over the last couple of years has involved bottom-up suggestions. And when it did, what made those suggestions successful versus ideas that just kind of never went?
The question is, how much of the change that we went through involved bottom-up suggestions? I have sort of a two-pronged answer to that. And one is, I've always been sort of an innovator in our newsroom and done a lot of leadership change. And over the years, we've had 1 million task forces and 1 million innovations that were completely bottom-up. And I totally believe in that. And that's by far the way I prefer to operate. And we went into the real planning to do that. One of the things that we did that was really unique and interesting was that we engaged a company that helped us with electronic brainstorming. Now, y'all just can't even imagine this. We have this innovations facility that has a 100-seat auditorium, and in the auditorium, every seat has a computer. And we did electronic brainstorming where we ask a question and people type their answer, and they just show up on the screen in a rolling amount of type. It's amazing for brainstorming, because what it does is, it's like any brainstorm. You know, if we went around the room and shouted out ideas for improving our newsroom, you know, you would hear one and you would key off of that, and it would give you a new idea, and it would shape your idea, and that's the way brainstorming works. Well, electronic brainstorming does it 10 times faster, because you don't have to go around the room. Everybody's typing. And so we did this over 3 days. We took 300 people in the newsroom and engaged them in electronic brainstorming about what's wrong with the structure, what needs fixing. You know, as we reorganize, what should our biggest priorities be? Do you buy into the goals we're getting, or do you need more education around those? It was really one of the coolest things ever. It got us tremendous buy-in from the staff at that stage of the reorg. Didn't really matter when we changed people's jobs. I mean, when it becomes personal, It's just personal, and that's just hard, but it's true. So we did everything we could to get a lot of real, buy-in around the real. We still had a very painful time of what I would call fairly top-down decision-making, because you have to. We had a certain number of people who were very offended that they needed to apply for jobs. Well, it was a fairness issue to us, and we thought it would be obvious to everyone that, if you combine your job and your job, then we can't just go say, you've got it, you don't, that you would have to have a competitive process for it. Well, both of y'all were insulted about it, that you would have to interview. So there was a time during the reorg that I think it got fairly top down. We're much, much more back to the newsroom we've always been, which is a collaborative bottom-up. We're right now doing the redesign that accompanies our new presses, and we'll have a new paper in sometime in the fall or end of the year. And it's all done by, staff committees. We have 9 different staff committees working on prototyping teams now. To me, the solutions are always better when they come from the ground. You just can't know at the level I'm at everything that you need to know to make the decisions that have to be made. And so I just, in any kind of reorg ever, I would always prefer to have it from the bottom up. One of the things that made ours a challenge was we did have a buyout associated with the reorg, and that put us in a very difficult legal environment. You couldn't talk to anybody about what job they might do or might not do, because if you did, you might be seen as trying to persuade someone to either take the buyout or not take the buyout. And it was felt that they needed to make the decision independent of knowing what their job might be. Well, now that's a real great thing. I got to decide whether I'm going to stay or go, and you won't tell me what I'm going to be doing if I stay. So it was hard. So, but I prefer the bottom up every time. Yes?
How long is the reorganization in its current state given to sort of see if it's working or not? And also, what are the expectations in terms of print circulation? Is it about sort of slowing the decline, or actually you have to start showing?
The question is, how long is the real given to see if it's working, and what is the expectation on print? It's working. We don't have any doubt of that. We've been able to do things that we were never able to do. Our traffic is up regularly, even without Michael Vick getting arrested, regularly 50%. We're so much more nimble. Our breaking news is so much better and faster, and our website is so much deeper and richer and more engaging. The print product is a little bit harder to tell because you don't get the instant feedback you get from the web. We certainly have heard anecdotally from some readers who like it. There's no doubt that the print product is less consistently, you could argue, either well edited or over edited depending on your position. We had a newsroom that was all focused on the print edition, so you didn't ever get a sloppy news judgment or a, not ever, but you had very rare cases where you're like, why did we put that on the front page? We had a fair amount of that, going through the reorg. It's not that it was like, oh my God, everybody disagreed with it, because some people obviously agreed with it. But so the print product is not, I would say, as consistently, high level of super high quality editing. To me, it's also way more interesting. It's not the safe choices of sort of the traditional news judgment all the time, and so there's more mix in it, and it's more interesting. We'll know more this fall. Our numbers from the last round of circulation, if you looked on the websites, if you looked at AJR, you'd say, oh my God, why did they do this? It was a disaster, because our circulation went down quite a bit. But we planned that. We cut back our print footprint quite a bit. When you take out the cutback in the print footprint, it showed I guess what I would say is a slight stabilization. And that's what we're hoping for, is stabilization. We're not really expecting to grow. We do expect over time, we're probably unique this way, but we said we don't expect a young person who's not taking a print subscription now to ever start one. That's not a priority of ours. We just don't expect it to happen. And so we think it'll be a slow decline and stabilization over time of the older readers who want a print edition, but eventually, some decline.
You're still on campuses trying to
I don't know the answer to that, but if we are, it would not be consistent with our philosophy. We believe that our opportunity to get young audiences is on the web. Yes?
I guess just running off that, would you not redesign the paper then to try to get younger audiences or do something else as opposed to what it looks like and how it works?
Right. We're actually redesigning the paper to stop trying to do that. If you think about all of your papers for 10, 12 years, y'all have been trying to get the occasional reader, right? Oh, we're going to have, a young people's hip section on Thursdays of what to do, and we're going to have news for kids on Mondays, and we're going to have, all these little things that loyal readers don't like, but we think people who rarely read the paper, if they did read the paper once in a while, it might make them say, oh, I'd read it twice instead of once. Our redesign is all about designing for our core audience. We are not trying to get occasional readers. We're trying to get people who like a newspaper, who value a printed newspaper experience, and who are likely to stick with us. And so that doesn't just mean, what we call the older elites, who are clearly the absolute core audience. It means those people who read on the web during the week but want a Sunday paper. It means people who occasionally pick up the paper. But we're not anymore chasing those people who don't like a newspaper. If they don't like a printed newspaper, it's okay with us. We have this product. It's available. It's free. It's really good. It's on the web. We'd love to get you there, but we're not trying to get you in print.
So what elements would go into redesigning for the core audience then?
The question is, what elements would go into redesigning for a core audience? Our core audience is older. They don't have kids at home. We'll probably reduce elementary and secondary school coverage. Our core audience has aging parents. They're trying to figure out where to put them and how to deal with nursing homes. Dealing with aging may become one of our new core beats. Our core audience doesn't read news for kids. I don't know if we'll eliminate it, but it's not something that will be a priority. Our core audience is much more interested in dining out and movies than they are nightclubs. Our entertainment product will become much less nightclub focused. That makes sense? What else? I think we're close to wrapping up, Jerry.
One question, are you doing anything with social networking online?
We are. I wish I knew more to tell you right now. We're in the middle of some contract negotiations to really improve our platform. We did a social network called My AJC that was supposed to be, I guess, as successful as Bakersfield at building its own, but it was technology challenged and it never took off. And so I think we're relooking at that right now to try and figure out how to integrate it better into our overall content management system. All right, any other questions? I just want to say, y'all are great. It's so exciting you're here. It's really cool what you're getting to learn, and it's a great opportunity. And I'm just thrilled to meet you all and to know that there are, people like y'all out there, because I'm certain that we're going to win this war and do everything we need to do with folks like y'all. So thank you.